Alright guys, so every now and then I like to do these response videos to messages that I get in my DMs or my email that I find to be fascinating. And I think they're worth a video because, one, it's an important conversation to have about my channel and my opinions and how I see the world. Okay, I hope that these videos give you guys a better idea of why I think the way I do and why I have the views that I do. And this message right here from this lovely lady who happens to be a black woman. Okay, she says that she's conservative and has probably been a Republican longer than I've been on this earth, according to her, allegedly. She sent me a message that I want to respond to because I think it is worth talking about this, okay? Because I think that this is a very important conversation that I would like to have. So without further ado, I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to give you guys my opinion on her issue with me, which is that she believes that I always side with the white man and that I am pandering to white women, okay? So without further ado, let's read her message. Hey Greg, I too am a black conservative and I have been a Republican probably longer than you've been on this earth, but I am hashtag black first. Okay, so not America first, but black first, right? With that said, my question to you, all caps, is when someone from the black community calls someone from the white community out as being a racist, why are you offended? That isn't going to make white people like, love, or accept you. I responded to that and I said, I'm not offended. I only have an issue if the accusations have no real basis or there is no evidence to back up the claims. And then she says in response, but to me, it seems that every time you're on the white side, even when they're dead wrong, why I stopped following Brandon Tatum. I also had a friend who defended white, right, or especially wrong, and I had to stop speaking to him. It's just something cringe about that to me, like you're seeking acceptance and validation from the white community at our own expense or pandering for white women, and even they won't respect you for this. A fascinating email. Okay, I thank this person for sending this email because it gives me something to talk about. First and foremost, I want to respond to her first message, which is that she said that her question for me is when someone from the black community calls someone from the white community out as being a racist, why are you offended? Okay, so she's asking me, why am I offended when a black person calls somebody white racist? Well, let me explain to you why I get offended. First of all, I don't get offended, but I do take issue with it because if you are somebody that is opposed to racism, okay, if you think that racism is vile, if you think that racism is evil, and you think that we should have minimum tolerance for racism in our society, then it is extremely important to call out people who weaponize the term racism or try to recklessly accuse people of being racist based off microaggressions that in reality are not based in racism. And the reason why is because it makes real accusations of racism much less serious. If everything is racist, then nothing is racist. Like, for example, let's compare this to the Me Too movement. If everything is sexual assault or grape, then nothing is sexual assault or grape, okay? And we know, or I would hope this person would agree, being that she is a conservative woman, she is a traditional woman, according to her profile, I hope that she would agree that if a woman falsely accuses a man of sexual misconduct, then that woman should be punished. People should be offended, right? Her language, okay? That the woman falsely accused a man of sexual misconduct. We should be offended by that, and we should take that seriously every single time that happens. And why is that? Well, the reason why is because what happens is that when you have false accusations of sexual misconduct, and they happen routinely from women that are basically trying to take advantage of men or falsely accuse men, then that makes real allegations, real situations of sexual assault or rape much less likely to be believed by the general public. Okay, it makes it harder for real victims to step forward and to have their cases taken seriously. Okay, I will hope that we all agree on that. Okay, if a woman falsely accuses a man of sexual misconduct, that society should be offended by that. We should be offended, and we should try to punish that woman for that. She should be punished for trying to ruin a man's life with false allegations. One, because again, the allegations are false, and two, because a woman making false allegations would make it harder for a woman that's actually a real victim to step forward and be taken seriously in regards to her situation, which is something that, you know, we should do. We should take real victims seriously, and we should assume that when women step forward and they make an accusation, that they're serious about it, that this is something that happened to them. However, we saw what happened with the Me Too movement, because all these allegations coming out, some of them true, some of them not so true, some of them far-fetched. We don't really know if they're true or not. No real evidence to back it up. And now the Me Too movement has become a joke. It's the same thing that is happening with racism, okay? The label racist, and also white supremacist as well too, is being thrown around so much that it now means nothing, right? It means nothing when somebody is labeled a racist or when somebody is accused of racism. Now, somebody like me who actually, you know, takes racism very serious, real obvious, overt instance of racism, things where we can objectively say, hey, this is racist. I think that when you overuse the word racist, or you over accuse people of being racist when there either is no racism, or you can't prove that there's racism, or you haven't been able to eliminate all other reasons for why something happened, okay, before coming to the conclusion of racism, then you're doing a disservice to people who actually experience real racism. And a vast majority of the time, what you see when you have black people, particularly black liberals, that come forward with accusations of racism against white people, is that they don't have any real evidence to suggest that whatever happened to them or the interaction in and of itself was racist. They don't know if it was racist or not. They just believe it was racist because the other person was white, and whatever incident or interaction they had didn't go the way that they wanted it to go. However, there are a multitude of reasons why an interaction or an event may have happened the way it did that doesn't have anything to do with racism. Like, for example, you hear this a lot. People that lose their jobs, or people that try to get jobs, right? They go on job interviews and they say, well, they didn't hire me because I'm black, or they fired me because I'm black, okay? And they feel like, well, I went into that interview, or I did that job the best that I could. There's no other reason why I didn't get the job or I was fired except that, well, it must be my skin color. They must not like black folks, right? And again, let's just use some common sense here. When people are typically a victim of a situation, they get fired from a job, or they don't get a job or whatever, and they truly feel like they did nothing wrong. When they tell the story, they're going to tell it from their point of view. They're not going to tell it from the other point of view, right? They're going to make it seem like they were perfect and they did nothing wrong. And the only explanation for why something happened to them had to be because of their skin color. It couldn't have been because of anything else except skin color. When the reality of the situation could be that, well, if you got fired, then, you know, maybe, just maybe your performance wasn't good. Maybe, just maybe, you made a mistake, or you made a critical mistake. Maybe, just maybe, you did something, or you had some interaction that led to you being fired that really doesn't have anything to do with racism. Just like if you don't get a job, maybe, just maybe, it was something about your resume. Maybe there was something you said during the interview. Maybe it was the way that you presented yourself in the interview. Maybe the interviewer just felt you wouldn't be a good fit for the team. Or maybe another applicant was more qualified, or just had a better interview than you had. Maybe the team felt like they would be a better fit. That led to you not getting the job. It has nothing to do with racism. But if you say that, well, it's racist, without actually doing self-reflection, then you don't get anywhere, right? You don't get anywhere when you do that. You don't get better and you don't improve your weaknesses, right? You don't make yourself better for the next job opportunity because you think that, well, what happened to me happened because of my skin color, not because, I was in an interview and I had no clue what I was talking about, right? Here's another situation that you guys may be familiar with. The old getting pulled over by a police officer, right? You get pulled over by a police officer. You're popping off at the mouth, disrespecting the police officer, getting rough with the police officer. And then you end up getting, I don't know, pulled out the car, getting roughed up by the police officer, or maybe even worst case scenario, getting shot and killed by a police officer. And then you want to cry racism, when it had nothing to do with your skin color as much as it had to do with your actions. You were resisting arrest. You were talking back to the police officer. You were not being compliant. That is what led to you having a negative interaction with the police. Had you simply just did what you were told to do, regardless of your skin color, you would have made it out unscathed. You would have got a ticket and you could have kept it pushing. You see what I'm saying? So what happens is that when that person goes public with these accusations of racism, and then it turns out that these accusations were false, or that they don't have any real evidence or proof to back up these claims of racism, now the next person that steps forward with accusations of racism, and they actually do have proof and evidence that their claims are true, that what happened to them was because of their race or their skin color, they're less likely to be believed. They're less likely to be taken seriously. Nowadays, in 2023, the term / label racist has been weaponized so much, it's been overused so much, that anytime, personally, I heard somebody being called a racist, it almost has a positive connotation to it, right? In my mind, I'm like, oh, that person must be doing something right if he's been accused of being racist, okay? That's how overused it is, because a vast majority of the time, the accusations of racism, particularly from black liberals that go against white people, they're not backed up by any evidence. They just say it's racist because, well, they disagree with them politically, or the situation didn't go the way they wanted it to go, or, there was some type of microaggression that occurred, or, they felt uncomfortable with a situation. They just automatically say, well, it's racist, right? It's racist, it's racist, it's racist. We hear it so much that it means nothing. So again, when people with real allegations, right? Real situations where they were a victim of racism step forward, they're less likely to be believed, right? They're much less likely to be believed. They're much less likely to be taken seriously. And I'll give you an example based off a situation that I've been talking about a lot here lately, the City Bike Karen situation. And I'm assuming that this ties into what this person messaged me about pandering to white women, okay? At, I guess, black people's expense, according to her argument. I'll tie it back into that situation since that's on everybody's mind. I think everybody's familiar with that situation. The fact that these young black teens, okay, who haven't come forward and proved that that bike was actually theirs, the fact that they falsely accused that woman of trying to steal that bike, falsely accused her of racism, and then you had the media falsely accuse her of trying to weaponize her whiteness to steal a bike from black teenagers, which again was a story that wasn't even believable in the first place, but whatever. The fact that that happened, and it's been proven now that those black teenagers were either grossly mistaken or just flat out lying or trying to steal the bike, okay, and that the white woman was right. Well, what happens in the very, 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 very unlikely event that there is a situation where a white woman commits an act of racism and tries to steal a black person's bike and then weaponizes her tears to cry foul and to potentially have those black people punished or endangered? Again, very, 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 very rare that that would happen, but you have a situation where it's real and legitimate that a white woman tried to steal a bike or committed an act of racism because of this prior incident, okay, where this woman was falsely accused. People are going to not take it as serious. People are going to automatically say, nah, get out of here with that, right? We've already seen this before. You can't accuse this person of, racism or whatever. It's going to automatically be dismissed. And that's what happens. Again, if you really care about fighting racism in this country, you should be offended when people make false allegations, because again, it makes it harder for people who are actual real victims of racism to come forward. It makes their stories much less believable. Now, when it comes to this idea of defending white people, versus, I guess, I don't know, defending black people or whatever. Again, I'm not exactly sure where she's getting this from, because it's not about defending anybody based off their race. It's about defending right and wrong. Okay, there is right and there is wrong. There are plenty of situations where I've come out here and said, this is wrong, or it's a situation where it happens to involve a white person and a black person, and I said that the white person was wrong. Like, for example, Ahmaud Arbery. In that situation, I said, well, hey, based off the laws and what they were charged with and the offenses that they allegedly committed, they were in the wrong. They should not have killed him. They should not have entrapped Ahmaud Arbery like that and confronted him when they even admitted at court that they didn't actually really see him commit a crime. They didn't really see it. They thought he did, but they didn't really witness it. So they basically falsely imprisoned him and then killed him while committing a crime of false imprisonment, which is why they got the charges that they got. A lot of people didn't agree with me on that. But that was a situation where I said, hey, you know, these white people were wrong. But it's situations like that that are really kind of few and far between. Those situations are much more rare than the false accusations of racism that are levied towards white people that you see almost on a daily basis. And that's my whole point. That's my whole point. I'm just going with what's right and what's wrong. I'm just calling it like I see it. Most of the time, the accusations of racism are petty when they come from black people. However, when there's acts of racism committed against white people, the person that committed the act of racism tells you, yeah, I did it because they're white, right? I did it because I'm racist towards whites. They tell you that openly. So it's very easily to call it like it is. So again, I mean, this is not about defending a race or trying to gain acceptance or approval from one race or another. It's simply about right and wrong. There are many situations on my channel where I did not side with the white person over the black person. Again, I got an email of somebody getting mad at me because I reminded you guys recently that there was a judge that lost her job because she called a guy that was, I think, breaking into her house. She saw it on camera and she claimed she was sedated at the time. She called him an N-word with the hard ER. And you guys know how I feel about the N-word. I really don't think it should be policed. But in that situation, the way that judge said it, and the fact that she's a judge, and as a judge, you have to be held to the highest standard, and you can't be a judge and people have actual reason or proof and evidence to suggest that, hey, you might be racially biased. I said, well, the fact that that's on camera and her saying that, considering the connotations of that word and how she said it and the way she used it, yeah, there's no way she can be a legitimate judge. People are not going to take her rulings seriously. They're going to say that she's racially biased, and they have a reason to believe that because of the footage of her saying the N-word. And I don't even blame her for saying it, considering what was happening to her at the time or what she saw on camera, but she's a judge and she has to be held to the highest of standard. If there's even one piece of evidence that people can have to point to her and say, hey, she's a racist, like, for example, she says the N-word with hard ER in her home, right? All of her rulings can be delegitimized, right? That delegitimizes and undermines the integrity of the criminal justice system. That's why she had to resign. Not one of my more popular takes, but that's the way I called it. That's the way I called it. And again, I've defended white people using the N-word plenty of times on my channel because I personally don't care. But again, because of that situation, because of it being a judge, it was a little bit different. And I had to call it in a way that is right and wrong and what is best for, again, the integrity of the criminal justice system. Because there's no way she could have continued to be a judge considering how there's actual footage of her using a racial slur. Too bad, so sad. If she would have worked in any other profession, I would argue that maybe she shouldn't lose her job. But it's simply because she was a government official, she was a judge. Yeah, I mean, you can't really have that. So again, that's not one of my more popular takes. That's not one of my takes always defending the white man. But again, those situations are very few and far between. They are much less prevalent than the false accusations of racism that are levied towards white people from black people. So I hope that helps clear things up in regards to why I have the opinions that I have, especially when it comes to a lot of these claims or accusations of racism. It's simply because most of the time, again, the accusations of racism from blacks against white are just, they're bogus. They don't have any evidence behind them, right? And that's why, you know, I get offended, according to her, when people make those claims, because it makes it much harder to believe people, black people specifically, who actually have real claims and allegations of racism. Makes it much harder. So again, I hope that clears things up. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.